self-awareness versus self-intellectualizing. In therapy, you can get clients that come in and they basically do this. They say, I need help because I have a real fear of um, connection. Like I have a fear of relationships, and I also want relationships, so I desire them. So I have an anxious attachment, and I've researched everything about this. And basically, like when I deprive myself, then I want more attention, then I get the attention, then I have a fear of it, and then I end up becoming avoidant. And so I keep going back and forth with this attachment. And it's really just due to the fact that my father abandoned us when we were 8, and then he was back in our life, and they abandoned us again when I was 16. And so I understand really why I do everything I do. I've been in therapy for several years and I've had several different therapists. So can you help me? And as a therapist, you're like, well, what do you need exactly? Because it sounds like you have a keen understanding of everything that you're experiencing and that you're going through. They say, well, I'm just stuck. Does this sound like you, where it's like you can understand intellectually everything as to why you are what you are and why you do what you do, but you still feel yourself kind of stuck, unable to break through in your healing journey to process the emotions, that feeling of being someone who knows the and understands the answers and why they do what they do, that is intellectualizing. Self-intellectualization is basically where a person understands the whys. They seek to understand the whys, and they overthink their thoughts and emotions in a detached manner. They may analyze, they may make a spreadsheet so that they can see it. Um, they look to understand themselves through rational analysis instead of emotional uh, connection or experience. It involves excessive thinking, overanalyzing. It can lead to emotional avoidance, difficulty connecting to others, and a sense of detachment. So, an intellectualizer would be like Joyce. Joyce said, that she feels like every negative thing that's happened in her life is related to her not being good enough. And so she connects bad things that have happened to her to her feeling of not being good enough. And she feels stuck there. She understands that that's low self-esteem. She understands that her rationale is not logical, but she can't seem to break out of it very easily. She doesn't know what to do to fix the issue, and that is because she's an intellectualizer. So intellectualizing is not the same as self-awareness. Actual self-awareness involves also understanding yourself, but with self-awareness, your focus is on understanding the whole of the self, the emotions, the thoughts, the behaviors, how all of that is interconnected, instead of just having information and explanation. They have gone through the process of exploration to be able to understand truly, not just themselves or why they do what they do, but what to do. A self aware person knows how to act in a social situation, knows what actions to take in a relationship. A self aware person knows what to do so that they're not projecting their trust issues onto another person. All right. So an intellectualizer is all in the why, and the self-aware person is in the what. They're in the action. They're in the personal power. They have, as a result, improved relationships, better decision making, better overall sense of well-being if you're self-aware. So what I want to help you do, if you're an intellectualizer, I want to get you over to being where you really want to be, which is truly self-aware. Because as intellectualizers, we might say, I'm self-aware, ironically. we feel self-aware. We say I'm very aware of myself, and we're saying that because we're aware of like the why and what we, and we've been to therapy, and it's like we've read the books and we get self-help books, and like, right, you to nausea, you can just read, learn, understand, but then it's like, okay, are you healed? No, I still have this issue. I know what to do, but it's like you can't quite make that connection and fully break through. And so I want to help you to be able to have those breakthroughs in understanding how to get out of just intellectualizing, which is some level of analysis, which is good, but to really understand yourself. So some key characteristics of self-intellectualization. Intellectualizers overthink, which is excessive analysis of thoughts and feelings, especially from a negative standpoint, making negative connections, like everything that happens is because I'm not good enough. Um, Self intellectualizers have emotional avoidance, avoiding and suppressing their emotions to the point where they can start to feel numb. Intellectualizers have mental rumination, constantly dwelling on past events. They can lack emotional connection. Um, Whereas with self awareness, we're going to have the improved relationships, enhanced decision making, better self confidence, better self control, better coping mechanisms. So you know you're self aware if, number one, you have emotional awareness. You recognize and understand the emotions that are coming up for you. Number two, you have self assessment. So you're able to evaluate your strengths as well as your weaknesses, your values, your beliefs. And then you realize that you have the ability to strengthen your strengths. You have the ability to diminish your weaknesses. You have the ability to alter your values where necessary, examine them over time, and to change your beliefs. And you know how to do these things. That's self awareness. Now you're living in your personal power because you're able to change your beliefs, alter your own values, right? Manage your emotions. Also, a self aware person has social awareness. So they understand the emotions and perspectives of others, but they're not hyper vigilant, right? The hyper vigilant person is the intellectualizer. Oh, I know why they're doing that. They probably are doing that because they're avoidant and they have attachment issues. And this person is probably a narcissist, and this person is probably a borderline, and they're doing all this calculation on everyone around them. But um, that's not the same as social awareness. That's, again, it feels like awareness, but it's just hypervigilance. It's really being done because you're trying to keep yourself safe. Whereas someone who's truly self-aware understands the emotions and perspectives of the other person, but they also understand how they should act in any given situation so that they can both be true to themselves as well as showing that concern for the other party. They're able to be true to themselves as well as show that concern for the other party. So they can care for people without losing themselves. They can care for people without losing themselves. So the traits of the intellectualizer are not traits that we want to have, right? Sometimes we can go to extremes where we, on one hand, are too trusting of people, and then on the other hand, we're not trusting enough. Or on one hand, we're too emotional, emotionally driven, and emotionally dysregulated, and then on the other hand, we numb the emotions. And that's what happens with intellectualizers. What you're trying to do to cope with all of the dysregulation and all the trauma is numb the emotions, become avoidant of the relationships, and separate yourself from all of the things. This may be because it wasn't safe to feel your emotions. It wasn't safe to show your emotions growing up. It could be something like that. But ultimately, intellectualizers still have the same problem that they had when they started the intellectualization process, although they're not totally out of control. Um, they still are living in fear. The intellectualization is a maladaptive coping mechanism to help them because they feel like they are living in fear. They're afraid. That's why they numb. An intellectualizer is ultimately afraid of feeling their feelings, of experiencing things. They may have lost track of how to feel their feelings. They're afraid. It's a maladaptive coping mechanism. So, some healers recommend that you try a more bottom up approach. A bottom up approach to healing is focusing on doing stretches, exercise, working with healers that work in the body first, and then getting that release from the bodily sensations or connecting to your emotions first, and then starting to learn the more intellectual parts of the situation. However, what I work in is helping people to learn top down because in life, we don't always have the luxury of laying out a yoga mat and then doing like certain things when we need to like feel healed. In life, we need to be able to process, sometimes spur of the moment, what's happening around us. And to do that, we need to utilize the strongest tool that we've been given, which is our miraculous brain. We need to learn to use our miraculous brain. So it hasn't, it's your body can store trauma, right? But we can heal the stored trauma in the body when we learn what to do with this thing, how to process things using our miraculous brain, right? So it's not uncommon that a trauma survivor will say, you know, I had a pain in my back when I started working with you. And then when I started doing mind therapy, over time, that pain in the back got less and less. Or my foot was all cramped up or jammed up. But then when I started doing my therapy, then as I started to heal, the foot started to feel better more and more. One woman said to me that her handwriting improved after she worked with me. So the healing that occurs doesn't have to start from the body. One gentleman asked me about the vagus nerve, and he's like, well, don't we have to heal the vagus nerve? Um, yes, but again, when we talk about the body is the body is made to be subordinate to the mind. The body is made to be subordinate to the mind. So that's why I work with your mind. That's why my book is called Mind and my website is called Mind, because what we're going to do is learn to use the operating system of the brain, which is the mind, so that the body will follow. Does that make sense to you? A part of the body is your subconscious, your brain, your emotions, and then the actual other body parts that you have. That's the body. The body heals and does better when we understand how to use the mind. So we have to be able to process information properly. Um, I got a text recently like, okay, I'm experiencing this anxiety, panic attacks. What am I supposed to do? So what should we do when we experience anxiety and panic attacks? There are some bodily things that are necessary. For instance, breathing, right? We need to breathe. Okay, we got to regulate the breathing. Okay. I recommend pausing 5 to 7 seconds so that you can learn to not move the body out of emotion. We don't want to move the body out of emotion. This is important because if we move the body out of emotion, we can become destructive or abusive, right? You can start hitting people if you're moving the body out of emotion, or you can start knocking stuff down, breaking your stuff. So we don't want to move the body out of emotion. We need to learn to relax. So you can sit back into a relaxed position, sit down if you're standing up. You can lay down when you're feeling stress or you're feeling emotional dysregulation. You want to relax the physical body as much as possible for the circumstance. So there's some circumstances where, like, let's say I'm at a work meeting. I can't right? I can't roll out the exercise mat and start doing Pilates, right? So I need to utilize the mind in that situation. Now I feel myself getting anxious. Maybe I need to speak up, or I did say something, or someone's calling me out. Let's use that one. Let's say someone's calling me out. You know that feeling you get inside when someone calls you out in public and you feel like, oh, like your heart starts beating and you get tense, maybe you get a little sweaty, you're sweating everywhere and you're just like, oh, oh. Okay. When a person doesn't understand how to use their mind, that's when everything breaks down because they go, oh no, oh no, I feel sweaty. I feel tense. I feel everything. I don't know what to do. My hands, they're turning into sand. Oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I saying? And then they go negative, negative. This always happens to me. Why am I always in this position? I'm never going to fit in. I'm never going to do well. Oh no, they must realize I'm nervous right now. I must look crazy. They must think I'm a fool. They must think I'm ugly. They must think I'm stupid. They must be regretting their decision to have me. Is this feeling negative? Right. And then we call it overthinking, but really we're just underthinking because we're just using the negative part of our brain. What's happening is you're not using the mind properly. That's not how the mind is. That's a misuse of the mind. What I did there is I felt a bodily sensation and then I followed the bodily sensation like that is supposed to be my guide and my God in life. Like, let me just bow down to the bodily sensation. I felt something in the body. That's everything. There is nothing else but what I feel in the body. That's everything. You see how that's disordered? We don't want to allow the bodily sensation to be what controls us. So you might say, well, I can't help it. Yeah. Would you say that's an excuse for a man that abuses his wife or children when he gets angry? Say, I couldn't help it. I got angry. So I had to swing my arms and hit people. No, that's not a good excuse. All right. So we all have the ability inbuilt to control ourselves. And that's what we would tell that man, right? You have the ability, sir, to control yourself. You don't have to hit people when you feel angry. Oh, wow. So we don't have to just let our body do whatever it's going to do. Okay, good. So what should we do when we feel nervous, when we feel upset, when we feel dysregulated? Now, if I'm in this moment, imagine I'm at this work meeting using the mind method. First thing I'm going to do when I notice that I'm feeling tense is make sure I'm as relaxed as I can be in this occasion. So I'm at a work meeting. I might be able to sit back in my chair and notice how I take a deep breath right away. That's because that's the only thing I control. That's what we control. So I'm going to keep my body in a calm position and I'm going to control the breathing and the blinking. This is what it looks like on the outside. That's what I look like when I'm nervous. Did I look nervous to you? Probably not by much. You can't actually tell what I'm thinking, can you? Good. That's where we want to be. That's where we want to put everyone right there in that spot where they have no idea what we are thinking. That is a position of power because knowledge is power. So what we don't want to do is this. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me not lean back. What we don't want to do is this. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's not my fault. I mean, oh my gosh, like I don't know why I did it. You know what the problem is right now? My mouth is moving. The mouth is a part of the body. We don't move the body. When we feel nervous and anxious, we need to relax and we need to focus on the breathing. That is step number one. If we're in a full blown panic attack, like you're just like you're going to pass out, you know, those ones where you feel like you're going to die, like literally, then you need to ground yourself in the present moment because your mind is somewhere else, especially when it's like there's not an actual issue that's happening in reality. You're just in the grocery store, you're in your car and you're having a panic attack. So a grounding technique that I like to use is name the five things that you can, I think I say name the five things you can see, four things you can hear, three things you can feel, two things you can smell, and one thing you can taste. It's basically that. Even just going through the process is grounding. So as you go through and you start naming each thing, you think about each thing for a moment, it helps to bring you back here to planet Earth, to present moment, ground you. So now you're back. We're all in the same place here. Where are we? We're nervous. We just got called out. We're in a work meeting. So I sit down, focus on my breathing, rule of 7 seconds. Rule of 7 seconds dictates I will not say a word until I have had 5 to 7 seconds to process what is happening around me. I don't care if everyone at work is Roman, Roman, Roman. Hey, hello. I don't care. I'll just give them one of these. They're just going to have to wait longer. You understand? It's a minimum of 5 to 7 seconds. Why? Because this is how we use the mind. When your computer boots up or your phone turns on, it boots up when it was shut down. Are you able to just immediately start clicking buttons? No, there's a boot up process. So even in these advanced instruments, it takes a minute. It's like, hey, give me a minute, right? It puts a little sign up there that says Apple or Samsung, right? In other words, give me a minute, give me 5 to 7 seconds to boot up before you just start pushing a bunch of buttons. You ever notice that on your devices? That's how we are. That's how we are. We need a minute. Okay. So people throw something at you and you got to process. So don't respond right away to anything, virtually to anything. Take your time. You want to relax. Now, as I breathe, and then I'm thinking, now as after about 7 seconds, that intellectual brain starts coming online, and now I start thinking of all the witty comebacks. Now I start thinking about how to process this in the moment. If it's at a work meeting and someone's calling me out, a good tool that comes to mind when I actually process and I think of all my healing is humor. Hmm, this is a good time to default to humor. So I personally would probably laugh and make a joke or say something self-deprecating like, yeah, that sounds like me. Guilty as charged, something like that. And it's amazing how powerful that tool is to diffuse the whole situation, right? And some of you guys might remember this story, but I'll tell it again. When I was window cleaning with some colleagues, I'll say, they were slightly older than me at the time, but the main boss guy, he had his right hand man, and I was working with them as a subcontractor. Anyway, the main boss guy was being a little nitpicky. He's normally a good guy, but he's just a little nitpicky this day. And he says to his right hand man, he goes, Eric, why are you using a 12-inch squeegee on a 13-inch window? And he yelled at him in front of me. And I was like, oh, God, that is so awkward. But Eric responds by saying, because I'm foolish. And it just diffused the whole situation. And I started cracking up. I never forgot it. And I immediately started implementing that response in everyday life. What he did was he responded with humor. This becomes a tool that we use in our tool belt of how to handle difficult situations. It's not always appropriate to use humor, by the way, but sometimes it is. And so you need to know how to handle the dysregulation, how to handle the nervousness. And you can't access those tools if you don't take a moment and pause 5 to 7 seconds, breathe, and then allow yourself to access the tools. There are other tools, of course, as well, such as in this work meeting situation, I can sandwich stack and pack on the positive things that I have to say about the work or the job, say whatever it is that I need to say to assert myself, and then finish up by saying more things that are positive. All these things are in the skills of assertiveness, which you can find inside Healing School or in my book, which is available on Amazon. So to be self-aware is to be able to do what I just did, to be able to handle the actual situation in real time. That's self-awareness. And then I was able to come off in a way that appears to be very self-aware. There was humor, there was self-deprecation, there was awareness, but I also didn't lack the ability to assert myself and explain my needs in the situation. That's self-awareness. All the intellectualizing and understanding in the world doesn't bring you there until you put these tools into practice. So your job is to make sure you have access to the tools first. Where can you get the tools? My app, Mind by Roman Zanoni. Have it on your phone. The YouTube channel. Both of these things are free. The YouTube channel has videos that teach you the skills of setting boundaries, assertiveness, interacting in relationships, vetting, having standards, so on and so forth. The book, having a copy of the book. That's where you can learn the skills. Enrolling in healing school. That's where you can learn skills. Being here at the meetings. These meetings are free. Every Monday, every Wednesday. This is where you learn the skills. Doing a one-on-one session with me. That's where you learn the skills. Or another person on my website. That's how we learn the skills. Once we have the skills, then we have what we need in our tool belt. And now we just need to take the action. Pausing, breathing, accessing our higher mind, and acting according not to our feelings, but to the intellectual self. Did you notice in the two examples I gave, in the first one, when I felt the bodily sensation, I allowed that to take me down a negative road, and that didn't make me feel better. In the second example that I showed you, where I felt it, I paused and I breathed, I took control. It is very important to be the CEO of the self, to take control. That is your job. You need to be the executive of the self. So if you don't want to be an intellectualizer anymore, remember to step up as the CEO. Your emotions and your feelings are not something to numb or ignore. Emotions and feelings are there to inform us. Fear is there as an informant. It is there to let you know. It is a part of your team. Fear, I would name that as your bodyguard, right? It's like your private security. It tells you what's going on. If you're a CEO and you have private security, it's going to be very commanding, right? It might say, hey, don't go over here. We need you to go here. Don't go here and do this and do that, because they're your private security. They're looking out for your safety. Should you always obey your private security? Probably not 100% of the time, because they would just tell you stay in a locked room all day, every day, because that's how they keep you safe. They have one job. That's what they focus on. That's what your fear is doing. Your fear has one job, to keep you safe. It's always going to tell you not to do everything. So following your fear through life, that's not a good strategy for life. You will accomplish nothing with your life. Truly, truly, you will have nothing to show for your time except for I survived. Well, yeah, because you lived your life in fear. But what's your legacy? Well, nothing. So I want you to be more than that, because you were born to be more than that. Okay? If we want to be beyond surviving into thriving, then we have to understand fear. We don't just ignore fear. Fear is a bodyguard. It's a person on our staff. It's our private security, right? Guilt. Guilt can be like your accountant. She's on your staff. She's someone you pay attention to. But do you follow guilt? Do you fear your guilt? Oh God, guilt's coming. Oh, my accountant's coming. Is that a good CEO who hides from his accountant? No. Is it a good CEO who shuts his accountant down and says, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care? No. How do you handle running a business as a CEO? You listen to your advisors. That's what we do with the emotions. Do you understand? You listen, but you don't obey. They are not your boss. You bring your accountant in. So what's going on? What are we looking at? The accountant says, well, we really got to watch this. We got to watch that. And this is really not good. Thank you so much. I appreciate your input. We're still going to move forward on this investment, but I appreciate this. You make the decision. Making sense? You're the CEO. The feelings work for you. They're part of your staff. Maybe we'll get more into that. Maybe we'll do a talk about the whole staff. We'll give every emotion a role in the staff. But for today, instead of intellectualizing, which is to listen to none of your staff, let's learn to be aware, to be a good CEO and pay attention to what the feelings are saying, offer solutions, and make decisions as the boss of the self.